Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's very nice to see you at the front of the room, calling the meeting to order.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming here despite the fact that I misled you all on Monday as to what time the meeting actually was. Oh, thank you. Thanks for coming. I'm out. Okay, now we're good. Okay, so thanks for coming. This is our last business meeting of this academic year, and we will have some people rotating off and others rotating on, and I'll handle that at the end of the meeting, but we'll get started with Nancy Graff Schultz, who kicks off our meetings. Thanks for coming.
Am I positioned appropriately?
You can stop there. Oh, yeah, good.
Okay. So I don't have too many updates for you today. Just reiterating that we're going to make it through this year very well, and we are because of all the turnover we've had this year, mainly retirements. We have now positioned ourselves very well for next year, and we're actually moving forward on some recruitments, which we've seen announcements for us. So that's pretty exciting. A couple other things I wanted to mention is I'm sure you all saw the email from Ann Murphy-Lom regarding the Student Wage Committee. Please fill out the survey for her. This committee and the work looking at student wages and how we pay our students is long overdue. And especially now with the budget cuts and budget cuts to the student line, it's very important. Okay, budget cuts to the student line and raising them to $9 an hour to begin with. It's all very important that we gather this information so we can make some really good decisions on moving forward and funding, etc. One other, speaking of raises to $9 an hour, one other surprise that we had that's going to affect our budget in years to come is that we now have to pay into a campus lump sum fund, which means in terms for those people who leave and who have ALRA and sabbatical, and they choose to take it as a lump sum payout, whether to roll it over into an IRA or they just want the lump sum payout, campus is now getting a pool of money which they will then let you dip into to pay those lump sums. I would say 90% of our employees who leave usually for retirement who have ALRA or sabbatical don't want that option. They want to last work today and then use their ALRA or sabbatical to go for 2 days, 2 weeks, however long it takes them. So, you know, like I like to do, I run the numbers and how does the GLS fare in all of this? Depending on the year, so they're basing it on the last 3 years, fiscal year 13 through the 15. So that's where I finally finalized my numbers. And basically, we would have paid in just shy of $100,000. We would have only, our people, we had 1 year where we had 2 people take large lump sums out, which totally sways these numbers. We would have collected out almost $75,000, which means we're paying in about 22% that we're never collecting out. So once again, there's another thing coming our way, which we don't have a say in, but now we have to pay into campus. So that'll be affecting our budgets. We, fortunate for us, are taking it out of the S&E and not the personnel line, which if there's a silver lining in any of this, that's what it is. But I'll be keeping a close eye on it. I've been very vocal with campus that, you know, not recorded. This is taxation without representation. You never asked, nor do they really care, my opinion at this point. My preference would be for every hour that gets put into ALRA or sabbatical, I pay to cover you in that year. So put me on the hook that year for everything you're putting away. They don't happen to like that option, so we're doing this pay-in thing. More details are coming. This is supposed to start as of July 1, and we don't have all the details yet. But our net, so for based on last year, we would have paid in just shy of $34,000 for last year alone. So that's what I'm estimating probably for the years to come. on that. So that is my budget news.
What's ALBRA stand for?
Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
Academic. Really? These are the questions you're supposed to submit before I get a It is a, so do you know what ALBRA is?
I mean, I'm guessing it has to do with,
So I can answer that
covering
question.
your- Okay, I can see that.
So sabbatical is used for, it's the same thing. University staff has sabbatical, academic staff have ALRA. The terms and conditions in which you get to put leave into that bank that never goes away is a little different. For academic staff, it feels like it's your 11th year of employment before you actually get to put any time into ALRA. So, and then it just, you never lose it. Like your vacation you have to use, and then you get to carry over for 1 year, and then you lose it if you don't use it. When something is in ALRA, it's forever there. And you currently, the rules state at retirement, you have the option to say, no, I will not take that as a lump sum payment. I will last work today and you will pay me through this. So that is your option at retirement, both for sabbatical too. It goes both ways.
Thank you.
Todd, did you have a question?
Annual leave reserve account?
Annual leave reserve account. Thank you. We're just going to go with you knew that, and we're not actually going to point out there's a computer in front of you that helped you with that information.
I totally did, I looked it up.
Oh, reference library.
He's just doing Librarians too.
So how many hours can you put into that?
Yeah, how many hours per year can you put into ALRA?
Into ALRA, I believe it's 40 hours a year,
40 hours.
and it's a little different for university staff. So if I recall correctly, for university staff, after they've been here quite a few years, they have an option. Oh, you guys are quizzing me on stuff I haven't looked at recently. They used to, I believe they still have an option for payout, although that could have ended as of July 1st. But they have the opportunity to put a little bit more into their sabbatical based on their years of service. So, but usually it's about 40 hours a year. So if you are eligible, on your August yellow sheet that you get, you will see a line at the bottom that says you are eligible to put 40 or whatever hours into ALRA. Please indicate. And then what we actually do is if someone is not returning the form, the HR office usually contacts you, or if we think you're about to lose something, we usually call you and say, hey, we don't have this form, we really need an answer. Have you thought about, because I know I've made some of those calls when push came to shove too. And so we try not to let anybody miss an opportunity. So.
Student minimum wage. Lots of moving parts and details and unknowns there still.
For instance, such as?
I'm just kind of curious about timelines. It seems like it's a very big job with a lot of different shops and variables to put together. But I'm curious, as somebody who's got to think about a bunch of student workers for the fall,
Yep.
Is the timeline still answers by fall? Like answers before the fall semester starts and
From the student wage group?
Yes.
Right. They have their priorities in helping us figure out the student wage and the compression that may occur for fall, and at what level do we worry about compression, and what level do we say, you know, at that point they're making X amount, you know, anybody making X and above, we're not worrying about compression. So they're going to have to look at all those factors, and I realize, you know, it's going to be a time crunch. And budgets might have to be changed up a little bit. Everybody's going to start with the budget they basically had last year for the student wages, and we're probably going to have to adjust as we gain additional information. But I'm very aware that you need information sooner rather than later about, okay, I know my new minimum wage is 9, but we had a 3-tier system. What's the new tiers? What's going to happen to my student who, after a year, just made it to $9 an hour? What's, you know, now they're compressed, what are we raising them to? So we will get you all that information as soon as we can.
And so there will be some guidance from sort of the central body about what those compression issues should look like from library. That's
right, because I don't want one library who has a student at 9 who's been here a year, moving them up to 10, and the next library, because of their budget, can only move them to 950.
Sure.
That's a lot how we've operated in the past due to budgets, and that's what we're trying to rectify with a lot of the work that this group is doing. And what I will actually do is we will see if we decide everybody at 9 is moving to whatever, we're going to see if we can't do that in the system instead of individually move everybody from 9 to the new rate.
Sure, so almost a little bit of wage standardization by role from the library to library to library.
Within the GLS.
Within the GLS.
Yes, and that's what the committee, so that's why it's important to have everybody fill out the survey so they can get as much information, so they can consider any special cases we may have that maybe someone on the committee isn't aware of, that they now become aware of, and we can work to getting more standardization, not just with the starting wage, but how we give out raises as well. So those are two of the issues that have needed attention for a while, and just now finally we're getting to it.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Nancy. So next, Tom Durkin is going to give us the academic staff assembly
And
report.
Ellen too. We're gonna-
And Ellen Jacks, co-report.
So, Ray, you, April, so go ahead, you can start.
I'm Ellen Jacks. I represent Memorial Library, which is District 476. So I'm going to give the updates from the meeting that was held on April 11th. And anybody else who happened to be there, feel free to chime in if there's some additions. So the meeting started with an update from Chancellor Blank. So that took up actually a large portion of our meeting. So here's some highlights. Her first thing she addressed was diversity and climate issues. So again, this is early April, a lot of incidents and things were happening on campus. So she acknowledged that first, and that these are actually mirroring incidents at other U.S. universities. So that is not necessarily a positive thing, but it's also, I think she was trying to say, hey, we're not alone. There's a larger community trying to work on this. So we don't necessarily need to be an island. And she addressed some things that have been accomplished and acknowledging there's a lot of work to be done. So she first mentioned her letter, open letter to the UW-Madison community, excuse me. And then she was highlighting Patrick Sims' call to action. As some of you may know, he put out a very powerful video saying enough is enough. So she brought that up. And they've also created a new webpage called the Campus Climate page. And these are all going to be linked on our notes that we'll send out again following the meeting. We've already sent them out already, I believe. So, this page is kind of set up to be updates of what campus is doing, what the Chancellor's office is doing to help all of us stay informed. And I think it was also an avenue to provide suggestions. She stressed several times that they are open to suggestions to help make campus more inclusive. So if you have any other ideas of things that they're not doing, could be doing, they're very open to suggestions. And one of the things they're doing is they're working on building a program on cultural competency and community building, something that's very similar to the programs they already have on alcohol abuse and sexual assault. So they're working on kind of doing a more campus-wide effort with that. They're also getting funding organized to provide additional student health counselors to help students deal with some issues that they might be going through. So more support to help students so maybe they won't feel so isolated, and hopefully that can in turn decrease incidents in the future. And along with that, they're also, a group of students is being organized to assess the Multicultural Student Center. Apparently there's been some dissatisfaction across students with how effective the center is, so they're looking at ways in which this can be made better, including looking at similar centers at other universities. So that's kind of the diversity and climate issues updates. Then there were a few other smaller updates. She addressed the voter ID, that there was an excellent turnout for students for voting. Apparently everybody knew how to get the right ID. They felt like they did a good job with communication. She addressed the titling compensation adjustments. Academic staff got the most from that. So there's avenues of getting more pay based on performance. And a couple of successes, she highlighted that they've got the bonding for the new chemistry building construction. She addressed that the Board of Regents passed a 10-year policy. There's a lot of issues on that, as we know, since that meeting. I'm sure other things will be addressed, but this again was from April 11th. So that's the bulk of the Chancellor's report. Then there are a few other committee reports. We attached a link to the ASEC reports. There's ad hoc community and assembly engagement. That if you're interested in that, we have a link to that as well. We can provide feedback. A few elections were announced. Again, those are also on the wiki. The other major update was from the UW-Madison Sexual Assault Climate Survey Task Force. I know a lot of you have seen these sort of presentations before at a variety of conferences on campus, but there's some really nice highlights that they addressed. Not everybody in the academic staff assembly had necessarily seen all those, so it was really nice that they came and kind of addressed the group. So a couple highlights or lowlights, if you'd like. We're one of 26 universities that participated in the survey. There are about 9,000 UW-Madison students who took it, so about 22%. So as far as surveys go, that's really not too bad. It's actually quite good. The problem is a lot of people had negative things to report, which is, but at least they had an avenue, right? So we addressed a few highlights that are on the wiki. I don't know how many of you want to hear right now, or I can just direct you to the wiki. Okay, I'm seeing nodding a few. So 27, almost 28% of undergraduate female students and 12% of female graduate students have been sexually assaulted during their time here. So pretty high numbers. The numbers for people of color, especially Native American, Alaskan, Hawaiian, those skyrocket, 46% of the original numbers, and 45.5% of disabled undergraduate female students. So of those, that original 26%. So those are some pretty disturbing numbers. They highlighted some of the recommendations, and we linked to some of the slides here of what the recommendations from the task force are. And hopefully we can all work together to stop this. So that's it from April 11th. It's a really cheerful meeting. Any questions on that? Sorry, before we.
Actually, there's two things that I would add to that.
Okay.
The titling and compensation study is going to begin, and they're expecting it to run for 1.5 to 2 years. So
Yes.
we've got a long horizon on that. And then there was some voting done on a resolution on children in the workplace.
I forgot to flip my page over. Sorry.
Cool.
Thank you, Ian. It was printed off weird, so I forgot I had a second side. Yes, so there were some resolutions that passed, including there's some nice conversation on the policy of children in the workplace. So this is something that originated from the UW system. So it's their language. We don't necessarily have had the option to alter the language, but we can provide recommendations. Overall, most people agreed that it was fine. But the big thing that we asked for them to we recommend that they have some language on this is flexibility for nursing mothers, providing lactation spaces. I know on campus there are a number of lactation rooms, but there wasn't anything written into the actual policy about having flexibility of, okay, I have to miss this meeting, I need to go over here now because I need to go and nurse my baby. So that was one issue.
There was the resolution itself had been passed by the faculty senate and passed by the university staff assemblage, but was not passed by the academic staff assembly because the language around what was acceptable children in the workplace, the felt that it was too soft on giving managers the authority to determine what was and wasn't okay. So there was a little bit of pushback. But I didn't get the sense that the academic staff assembly not passing it stopped it from happening because it's a UW system-wide thing that had already been through the other bodies.
Exactly. So we didn't really have the opportunity to make resolutions on it. We passed it with these recommendations. So number one, providing flexibility for nursing mothers, and then the second point is clarifying the procedures if there's a conflict between supervisor and employee. There weren't anything about, well, how do you go forth? There's again there's a lot of leniency in there that there's some questions on. We also voted to change some term limits for ASEC, and there's a resolution of the Committee on Women in the University regarding the UW-Madison Sexual Assault Survey Task Force. And we link to those documents as well. So we're basically saying that this is an issue. Let's make it better. Yep, and then we discussed a few different potential wordings for resolution of shared government's value statement that was addressed at the May meeting.
All right, thank you very much, Ellen. A couple extra things from the April meeting.
It was a big meeting.
It wasn't a very long meeting, a lot of notes, it's like 3 pages long.
Yeah.
So Nancy Graf Schultz was elected to the Compensation and Economic Benefits Committee. So hooray for Nancy. And then also Anna Lewis, I think she's at Merit, if I remember correctly. She was elected to the Personnel Policies and Procedures Committee. So hooray for Anna. It doesn't look like she's here. All right. So moving on to May 23rd, unless anybody had any more questions about that. Nope. All right. So moving on to May 23rd, one of the major things that they always do at that last May meeting in the Academic Staff Assembly is announce the Academic Staff Excellence Award winners. I'm not going to go through the whole list here, but let's just give a hand for all of our colleagues across campus who won those awards. It's extremely competitive. They get a lot of nominations for those awards, and whenever you look through that list, the people really deserve the awards that they win. They've really done some amazing stuff. One thing that I think Nancy might have more information for us than I have is Mark Walters from the Office of Human Resources talked about the Fair Labor Standards Act changes that are coming up, and I didn't know if you want, instead of having me kind of go through this, I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to say about that, probably more with more accuracy or better information.
So the decision finally came down early this week, late last week, I can't remember. But we had talked about that the new Fair Labor Standards Act was going to go from 24,000 to 50,400. They lowered that down to 47,236. It's an odd number, or 436, something right there, but 47,000 something ending in 6. And so we really have very few employees that are affected by that. However, the effects across campus are enormous. So it's going to affect a lot of students working on grants, and that in campus, we haven't heard word from campus yet. They're still trying to figure out all the details of how they're going to work through some of this. I know the NIH grants indicated that they will up their new minimum to that 47,000 limit in the future. So that granting agency is taking that into consideration. So basically what that means in a nutshell is academic staff who don't earn that salary will be considered academic hourly. And truly the only people we have in that ballpark are our academic staff who work part-time. So it's not your position at 100%, it is your position and what you take home. So if you make 60,000 at 100%, but you're only 50% and take home 30,000, you are under the threshold and you are an academic hourly employee. And so therefore, if you're 50%, you only get to work the 20 hours a week. I won't get into the details. But if, let's say you are one of our resident librarians and you're making under the 47,000 threshold, you only get to work 40 hours a week, and if you work 41, 42, 43 hours in a week, we have to pay you overtime, which is time and a half. And so there will be some mechanism for keeping track of time for our few employees who are under that threshold. But we're waiting for a little bit more direction from campus. Are they going to come up with a form? What are they going to do before we head out the door on that? But I've had a conversation with at least the supervisor of the majority of the employees who are affected, and pretty much those academic staff who are on a part-time basis. It really doesn't affect too terribly much, but it'll be our resident librarians and the things they can take advantage of. So we're going to have to keep their hours employed.
I work fairly closely with one of our resident librarians, and I'm aware that sometimes a particular position ends up working more than 40 hours a week or has historically. So is there going to be, this is mostly from my own curiosity, like a line drawn and they going to be told we won't be paying you overtime, right? Or is overtime going to be an option?
So in most cases, overtime is not going to be an option. We are going to be fighting the wage battle next year the way that it is.
Sure.
And so we are going to have to try to structure their jobs that it maxes out at 40 hours a week.
Okay.
So, in the future, we can look at the minimum wage, but we also have a lot of compression we got to worry about. So it's just not an easy answer. And we also just raised the starting wage for our resident librarians for this coming year to 45,000. So we just can't go there yet,
Okay.
but But the other battle with this Fair Labor Standards Act is they are going to have a cost of, not the right words, but like a cost of living increase. So every 3 years, the threshold is going to go up. And they expect in 3 years, 2020, it'll be $50,400. That far outpaces anything campus does as far as our increases. And so that'll be, you know, we'll have to meet whatever we're doing this year, but then we have to be very conscientious about how we're doing things in the year 2020 when a new threshold comes around too. So,
What about split position?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Split position?
So thank you. Split positions, it is the totality of their positions. And so if you have a 50% position in the GLS and a 50% position in another unit, it is the positions combined together that will make up the threshold, not each individual position. And if you happen to have one that is academic and one that's university staff, they are looking at the majority of duties or the major percentage. I am not aware of any case that we have that 50% university staff, 50% academic, so I'm not even going down that nightmare path. But our people who do have split positions would be with another unit on campus, and they would all be full-time at that point, so it's okay. Any other questions? Thank you for the reminder.
Oh, you're welcome.
I've been living and breathing this, so all I forgot.
We kind of put you on the spot there, but that was great. And we have some notes from the meeting, but the information that Nancy gave us is more updated than the stuff we've got there. So other things, let's see. There was a report from the ad hoc committee on assembly engagement. Tim Markle gave a little presentation about that. And basically, that committee wants to come up with some ways to orient people who are part of the academic staff assembly. So if you're interested in joining at some point, becoming a representative or an alternate, they're thinking about having some orientation activities to orient people to the way the entire sort of structure works, as well as how to participate effectively in the meetings, because things have to happen in sort of like a certain order, and people get really confused, and it sort of makes the meetings run kind of slowly sometimes. And then the other thing is they've had some feedback that lots of people come to the academic staff assembly meetings to give reports, and then people say, well, I've never heard of this before. It would have been great if we could have heard about this before, so that there could be a process for feedback before the final report is given. So I actually thought that was a really good idea, and so hopefully we'll see something about that. And then there are a number of things that came up for a vote, and I'm going to kind of skip through to the last one that I thought was very important. The Academic Staff Assembly passed a resolution on cultural competency. That title is not very, it's not as specific as it could be. So basically, the Academic Staff Assembly passed a resolution saying that bigotry on campus is not acceptable to academic staff, and that campus administration needs to do something to address these issues. And hopefully something will happen. We'll see what happens next year. Does anybody have any questions about the May meeting, the May Academic Staff Assembly meeting? All right. Yes.
Can I just add that the Fair Labor Standards, the new threshold becomes effective December 1st.
December
So we do
1st,
have time
okay.
to work on it, not July 1st as was originally proposed, so.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Tom and Ellen. Next, we're going to have Julie Arnsdorf. She's going to give us both the University Library Committee update and a treasury report. 2 for 1.
Okay. So first, University Library Committee. Just a reminder that the minutes for the University Library Committee are posted on the website. So if you're curious about anything that I mentioned today or things I've mentioned in the past, on the library website, if you go to About and then University Library Committee and then Meeting Minutes, you can see all of our past minutes through April of this year. The May minutes won't be approved until the fall. Some staffing changes on the University Library Committee. Ian Benton will be joining us as secretary. I don't have to take minutes anymore. Carrie Nelson will be leaving the committee. She's finishing up her 2 years. A few announcements that Ed Van Gemmert made. You all know Went Commons Library was merging with the GLS. right next door to this room here, the graduate student study space. They're planning an open house on September 9th from 2 till 4 p.m. I don't have any more details other than the date and the time. It's something that's still being worked out. Ed gave a presentation at the April 13th Dean's Council meeting, and at that meeting he asked for additional funds for acquisitions and inflationary spending, and that request was very well received. It will require some additional support from the libraries to move that along, but it was well received. Dan Klingenberg, who has been the chair of the University Library Committee for this past year, will be our chair again next year. There were no other nominations for chair, and he was willing to serve for another year. He is in engineering. The open access issue that we've been working on in the University Library Committee this year, we are moving forward with we started brainstorming ideas for faculty and staff education and ways to solicit concerns from faculty and staff across campus. This is a rather large undertaking. The idea of both educating and gathering concerns from every department on campus is rather daunting, so we were brainstorming ways to make that scalable. And then lastly, Ben Strand provided an update on advancement and development. Just in summary, the campaign goal as part of the Always Forward campaign, I believe, the library's campaign goal is 63 to 74 million. And Beth, I sent you all of these numbers in an email, just in case. So the campaign goal was 63 to 74 million, and we've raised 3.2 million so far in a variety of forms. During Ben's presentation to the University Library Committee, he also broached the topic of corporate sponsorship and some possibilities for that. University Library Committee members voiced some concerns about that. So, and again, you can see the minutes on the website. Okay, so budget updates. Before, I have these numbers for you too, Beth. Before the high tea, we had $524.45 in our checking account. We had budgeted $379 for the high tea based on last year's event. As a result of the high tea registration, Librarians Assembly dues, and then additional programming donations, thank you all for that, we were able to raise $1,155. The high tea catering did indeed cost $379, so as all of this washed out, we now have $1,300.45 in our checking. So we're starting out for the next year in a pretty good position. As a comparison, last year after the high tea, we had $908.10 in our checking. So we're doing well compared to last year. We should have enough to provide ongoing good programming for the year, and we should additionally have enough for next year's high tea. Any questions about University Library Committee or budget?
What was,
Yes.
what was presented regarding this corporate sponsorship stuff?
One of the ideas that was put forward was, and I don't think that it was anything solid, it was just a brainstorming idea, was having corporate sponsorship of databases and like having a little message pop up like, this database brought to you by this company. And one of the concerns that a faculty member raised was, well, I don't want my students to have corporate messages popping up when they're trying to do research. So they didn't, and also the issues involved with, well, maybe a corporation would sponsor this database, but not this database for different reasons. So, and there were other concerns voiced as well. But. Any other questions? Thank you.
Julie. Okay, Treasury report is a good segue into our programming committee report. Steve Fry is going to give us an update.
Thank you.
I'm going to try to do this without notes. This is always dangerous. By the way, as people have been talking, I've been noticing this crane going back and forth. So if anyone sees something flying at the window, can you let me know? Never turn your back towards the crane. So 3 things. One is the high tea, also called the Librarians Assembly Award Gathering. We don't know what we're going to call it in the future. In the past, the tradition has been a high tea. We kind of moved away from the purpose of that over time. And we think that the award ceremony that we just did went well. We got a lot of good feedback that it went well. So we'll talk, the steering committee will talk once we get going again this summer and the fall about, is that what we do again next spring? We'll see. But eventually, if this becomes a tradition, maybe we'll figure out a new name for it. We have gotten a lot of good feedback, as I mentioned. One of the things, when there are 25 awards, it kind of sets in place a little mechanism there for good feedback from those 25 people who received awards. So that's always a good thing. But we have also gotten some really excellent feedback from folks who had ideas for how we could improve the award ceremony if we do it again next year. So we really welcome that. So please keep providing that feedback if you haven't already, especially if that feedback is about how we could improve that ceremony, that high tea, whatever we call it. So that's the high tea. The Eat, Talk, Run gatherings went really well this year. We canceled the most recent one because it seemed like a lot of people were going to be out that day. We're planning on starting that up again in the fall. Most times we had between 15 and 20, even 25 folks that came to those, which is really great on a Friday morning. So 2 things. One is if you have some ideas for topics, usually those topics are something related to work that you do here in the libraries that you want your colleagues to know about. So that would be one idea. Or other people that you know about, their work that they're doing. If you think that should be shared, let us know. Another one, if there is something that helps in terms of work productivity that you'd like to share, let us know about that as well, and we can get that as one of the topics. And the third is just people's hobbies. So if you have interesting hobbies that you'd like to share with folks, let us know, and we can kind of work that into next year's schedule. Let me also mention that Friday morning, 8:30 to 9:30 isn't maybe the best time for people. We've gotten some feedback that they'd love to attend, but that's not a good time. So let me do a little activity here, and let me think about the best time to have these Eat, Talk, Run gatherings for you. Just think about that for a second. Okay, now I want everyone at the same time to yell out the day and the time. Ready? Okay, I'm hoping for you to have unanimity here. Ready, go. Great, so we're all in agreement. You all heard what it was. Beth, I hope you got that down. And we'll have it at that time next year. No, we'll probably change it, and we don't know what we'll change it to, but it'll be some other time that maybe works for some of the folks who weren't able to make it up until now. And then the third thing is, so you saw an email that came out a couple weeks ago from Laura Schmidley and myself about biking, and we're still working on that. Laura and I are going to meet tomorrow, I think, to talk about that and begin to plan some of those group rides. But we began to talk with Librarians Assembly about, well, it would be great to kind of partner a little bit with that and then build on the end of that group ride a social gathering at some place, at some restaurant, at some location where there's food, where there's beverage, and even to have it at a place where you don't have to bicycle to, that you could just decide to show up at a certain time, and that's when we gathered. So that's what we're planning to, that's what we're going to plan to do, is find some rides, figure out some rides that we can do at some different times, and at the end of those rides, we'll set a time where we're all gathering and let people know about that, and note that those will become Librarians Assembly sponsored social events during the summer. Maybe there'll be 2 or 3 of those, we don't know yet. So I think that's it for programming. If you have any ideas, or please send that feedback. Any questions right now? No? Great.
That was fun. Thanks, Steve. Raina Bloom's up next. She's going to update us on Professional Concerns Committee.
Okay. Every time I have to print something out, it guarantees that the attendance is going to be really good. So apologies in advance for the sharing, but I think it's necessarily going to have to happen. Take some, pass them back. Here we go. I can use the electronic version of mine, so here's one more. So this is the report from the listening sessions. this spring semester. Here. I think. So as I wrote, 4 listening sessions were held and 3 attended in the spring semester 2016. Not including professional concerns committee members who were present to record comments, there were 6 attendees total and no email comments were submitted this time around. So I've recorded the major themes here. We had productive conversations about middle management, and that was just the phrase that we could come up with to describe the people who we were talking about, and we were basically talking about not AULs. And talking about having conversations about how managers can contribute productively and positively to the climate and culture of the GLS in ways that they aren't already. And also an extended conversation in more than one context about supporting people who are taking on increasing responsibility as the management structure of the GLS changes and how important we think that is. Talking about how they can be evaluated, how they can be mentored, and this, like I wrote, this theme arose at more than one meeting. A conversation about professional development, again, around this idea of time and staffing being tighter. Like, how do we make it clear that professional development is important and a set of activities and experiences that people should be pursuing even if time and staffing feel really tight. Retirement, so how we encourage our retiring colleagues to communicate what they know about the GLS before they leave, how that can happen. And I know there are already mechanisms in place, but how we really underscore those mechanisms. Stress of transition, still conversation about communication, and the concerns were really articulated in the context of wanting to support people who are visibly impacted by change and transitions, like wanting to know, to paraphrase, like in a sense, when it's okay to talk about things that we know about, came up. Interpersonal issues, we really made an effort this semester to, when people were coming to us with stories about interpersonal conflict or other challenges, to strongly refer those people up to existing resources where they could have some positive change and process made. And then, as Steve talked about already, we have feedback on the high T. Feedback has been shared around. So that's what we did this semester. It was a good time. Plug for professional concerns. That's what I wanted to say. So Professional Concerns Committee, the chair of Professional Concerns has to be part of Librarians Assembly steering, but the membership of Professional Concerns does not have to be part of Librarians Assembly steering. So anybody who wants to be part of Professional Concerns can join that experience at any time. Current membership includes Ian Benton, Aaron Carrillo, Josh Zimmerman, Tricia Carino, myself. Am I forgetting anybody? Don't think so. Okay, so anybody who's interested in professional concerns, please let me or any of the other committee members know. It's as simple as just adding your name to the email conversations that we have. It's a relatively low time commitment, but it's a really positive and useful experience. So let us know if you have questions. That's pretty much all I have. Does anybody have any questions right now about this report? I'm going to be sending out an electronic version on the Librarians Assembly email list, but I just wanted to share it in print first. Any questions? Yes.
So you'll set this up to Librarians Assembly. Are any of these things, are they things you think should be communicated to the admin team or will be communicated to the admin team?
I do share the report with the admin team, just as a matter of course, letting them know what the conversations were around. Thank you for asking, though. Any other questions? Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Raina. So I'm going to give a quick update on the Resource Management Redesign Task Force and what's going on with that at the moment. So Resource Management Redesign is looking at the workflows and organization of our resource management divisions. So we're mainly looking at cataloging, acquisitions, preservation, and digital collections, looking at workflows and how people work together and to see if we can update those in order to support our strategic goals. So we have a wiki and we've had a timeline on there, and we're the timeline is kind of sliding a bit. We're towards the end of our information gathering phase, and the task force, we have a report that we're putting together, and I think, Kat, correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to share this with the staff, correct?
Yes.
At some point.
So we asked for feedback from the advisory group, and we gave them a deadline from last week. So
okay.
Probably this week to incorporate any feedback from that commission.
Okay. Thanks for that, because I was not at that last meeting. So, so yes, we do have an advisory group, so they are doing some revising of our report, then we can share it with everyone. There was an email that went out yesterday that Lee sent to Libraries L, and I'll just kind of go over some of that information. So the next stage has to do with consultants coming in and doing a 2-day visit. We had hoped that that would be happening at the end of this month, and that's been pushed because of contract negotiations, so we're hoping early July. And as soon as those things get finalized, there will be an announcement of who those consultants are and what the schedule is going to be like and who they're talking to during those 2 days that they're here. And then after they leave, within 30 days, we'll be provided with a report from them. And in that time, the task force is going to be kind of doing, even though we've already kind of started, but doing parallel work where we're going to be making our own, doing some exercises, working with people and making our own set of recommendations. And then we'll see how the two fit together. And according to Lee's email, the final phase of the project calls for development of a final plan based on both sets of recommendations. And the intention is to have a plan finalized for GLS exec by the end of summer. So as of yesterday, that's what our timeline is looking like. If you have any questions, you can email the Resource Management Redesign Task Force. I believe it's rmr-tf@list.library.wis.edu. Does anyone have any questions about that? Good. Michael, I know you wanted to introduce a new colleague to everyone.
Yeah, I'd just like to introduce Yorka Dixon. I've been visiting with us since the beginning of this month. She's part-time, original Catalan and part-time with the Japanese study with Billy Rockefeller.
Thank you. So we'll have a couple of other small intros here now. As I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, there are 3 of us on the steering committee who are rotating off, and that's myself, Raina Bloom, and Craig Cook, who can be with us today. And we luckily got 3 nominees, 3 candidates to fill the position, which is great. It's Todd Mickelson-Ambelang, Katie Sanders, and Peggy Smith from Business. And if the 2 of you wouldn't mind each individually standing up and saying a little something. This is Todd in the back and Katie. Just say who you are for those that don't know. Maybe what department you're in or what you do.
Geographer here at Memorial. I do Scandinavian studies, Laxics, Jewish and South Asian studies.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Katie Sanders, I work in LTD.
Okay, great. And Peggy Smith, who's from the Business Library, I believe. She couldn't make it here today, but she'll also be joining us. And we will have a meeting in late June to swap duties and rotate off, and then you'll be hearing from them in July. So any other spontaneous announcements or discussions? We still have 10 minutes if we want to be spontaneous. Ian, you got anything?
Well, no,
Okay.
not this time.
Anyone else? Anything fun to share?
I didn't have anything prepared.
Okay, well, thanks for coming, everyone. We have snacks. Please help us eat them. And have a good rest of the week.
Oh, I will make a quick
Oh, okay.
Or, yeah, I'll cover for you. Just if,
Sorry.
Meg Alkeeper, who's worked at Memorial Clinical Sciences, and Steve Bach is retiring. Retirement cards are available down in the administration office, so this might be a good time to stop by. And you're certainly welcome to the party here tomorrow at 3 to 5.
Great. Thanks.
I do have one.
Hi.
Professional Development Programming Allowances Committee is looking for 1 more person. That's the group that takes in requests for professional development programming money so we can kind of spread the wealth around the library system and get a good bang for buck on programming. We need 1 more person. Ellen Jackson is going to be joining the committee. It's a relatively low time commitment, say an hour, 2 hours a month. So if anybody has interest in that work, come talk to me. I'd be glad to tell you more.
Great. Thanks.
I can't have a disorder.